Hey, what's going on? Talking about the attacks and the airstrikes that Trump ordered for Iran.
Able to do to where they've been working on the missiles that would actually deliver a nuclear weapon. This has been key to the Israeli defense, to find those long-range missiles that could potentially carry a weapon. So all those things, you remember when we've talked about this in a context with North Korea, you have to be able to have a weapon. You have to take that weapon and put it on a ballistic missile. You have to be able to fly that missile to its intended target. You have to be able to deploy that weapon, and then it has to detonate when it gets to whatever that target is. So there are many pieces that go into having nuclear weapons capability. It's really best to take out every single piece of that capability.
Oh, Steve, we truly appreciate your explanations on all of this. And we're going to talk a little bit more here with nuclear expert James Acton, who is joining us now on the phone. James, don't know if you were able to hear my conversation right before, but just trying to get a better sense, James, of the types of facilities, these three nuclear facilities that the Trump administration says were taken out. It was a successful series of strikes, they say. Talk to us more about what was there and what the United States and Israel were most worried about.
Well, good evening. The facilities that the United States attacked this evening were those that were designed to produce the highly enriched uranium for use in a nuclear weapon. They were involved in refining ore into a form of gaseous uranium and then enriching that into highly enriched uranium. The problem the United States and Israel have is Iran almost certainly has materials and equipment whose location we don't know about. So I've heard a lot this evening about the success of the attacks and how about the United States and Israel have destroyed facilities. But the problem that we now face is we haven't destroyed knowledge, we haven't destroyed materials, and we haven't destroyed equipment. And I don't think this attack has set Iran back nearly so far as some of the suggestions have indicated.
So, James, let me ask you more about that, because that is the suggestion that, maybe you can't take out the knowledge, maybe you can't take out, all of the equipment and facilities, but if you can set the numbers, that you weaken them dramatically, you could potentially reset peace talks or nuclear negotiations in the future. How much of a setback do you think a strike like this could be for Iran?
Well, there's two things that I'm very worried we haven't destroyed. The first thing is Iran's highly enriched uranium that was previously stored at Isfahan. Now, that was one of the facilities that was attacked tonight, but the Iranians have claimed, and I tend to believe them, that the highly enriched uranium had already been moved from Isfahan. This is material that is stored in things that look very much like scuba tanks. It's that small. Tracking that material is going to be exceptionally difficult. After the collapse of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the IAEA lost the ability to monitor to constitute its program, probably in a short number of years. And don't forget, one of the arguments against the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was that 10 to 15 years wasn't good enough of a delay. So I think the reason why this is the beginning, not the end of conflict, is because when evidence emerges that Iran is rebuilding its nuclear weapons program, as I believe is likely to happen, are we, the United States, prepared to bomb it again? And if it starts to reconstitute again, are we prepared to bomb it again after that?
Exactly. And how long of a prolonged conflict could this mean that the United States just got itself involved in? James Acton, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. I do want to go back to Ian Panel in Tel Aviv. Ian, I understand you're getting more reaction from the Israeli government.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, this is a recorded message from Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu speaking in English. In other words, this is a message to the American people and to the US administration. He says, President Trump and I often say peace through strength. First comes strength, then comes peace. And tonight, President Trump and the United States acted with a lot of strength. Now, he says more, and we're working to get that clip cleared so we can air it. We're also expecting to hear from Prime Minister Netanyahu after President Trump has spoken. We also just saw a tweet or posting on X from an Israeli minister, junior minister, praising President Trump. And I think that will be the reaction across Israel, not just on the political spectrum, but also on the social spectrum. They felt that although Israel said it could do it alone, that's what I was hearing from Israeli officials, clearly it was only the US that had the military capacity to conduct such a mission. Now, the Iranians are saying that the impact has been minimal. We have a tweet again from an advisor to the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament. That wouldn't they? But again, this, as we've been talking about, this bomb damage assessment is absolutely critical to work out how successful it's been. As your previous guest was talking about, what really matters here in deciding whether or not this is a one-off or whether part of an ongoing engagement by the United States and further action by the Israeli military is how much of an impact it actually had.
Ian, panel, thanks once again. I want to go back to our Mary Bruce, our chief White House correspondent, who is in Washington right now following all of this. And Mary, we are getting more reaction from Democrats and members of Congress. This from leader Hakeem Jeffries saying that Donald Trump promised to bring peace to the Middle East. He has failed to deliver on that promise. The risk of war has now dramatically increased. That is going to be a criticism President Trump is going to face after these strikes, not only from Democrats, but from many in his own party.
Yeah, it sure is, Wood. And look, this is a president who long promised that he was not going to drag this country further into conflict in the Middle East. He was not going to do exactly or put himself in the position that he exactly is in now. And we have seen just this remarkable shift in the last 24 hours. I mean, it was only 24 hours ago that the White House came out, 48 hours ago that the White House came out and said that they thought there was a substantial chance of talks getting Iran back to the negotiating table. President Trump, as we know, has long been urging for negotiations, hoping to reach some kind of new nuclear deal. And I pressed the White House to just 2 days ago on what signs of progress had the president seen? Was he actually seeing any inklings of steps in the right direction that made him think that a nuclear deal could still be salvaged? And they wouldn't say. The press secretary telling me she wasn't going to get into the president's rationale, but that he did believe there was a substantial chance. What changed is one of many big questions here tonight. What did the president see that made him believe that there was absolutely no more hope of that? So much so that he was going to take action and do something that he, long promised he wouldn't do. But I think just as much as the president has long said that he was not going, that he was hoping for negotiations, even longer he has promised that Iran simply cannot have a nuclear weapon. One of the things looking forward that is important to keep in mind, and as you were just discussing, how long of a solution is this? Because to truly prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon, you are likely going to need this kind of a deal. Presumably, whatever capabilities have been now destroyed, they could once again get back to this position, whether it's, several years down the line. So, how long of a solution, how lasting a solution is this? But I think it will be interesting. Certainly, we will be listening closely to the president coming up here shortly as to what led him to finally put the country, to put himself in a position that he said he wouldn't be in. What changed his mind to make him decide to drag America even further into this conflict? We know he was facing tremendous pressure from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm told they have talked this evening after the strikes. Obviously, the U.S. gave Israel a heads up as well. We know ahead of these strikes, so signs that they've been working closely and have been closely coordinated on all of this. But the president, we know it also weighed heavily on him, the deep divisions in his own party over this. He's really, we have seen this playing out very publicly over the last few days, those in his party that wanted him to hold out for talks versus those who are urging him to get more directly involved in this conflict. So we will wait and see what we hear from the president here in just a few moments.
And Mary, I'd like to follow up on that because we know this meeting happened tonight between the president and his national security advisors, his director, his DNI director, Tulsi Gabbard, expressed a difference of opinion from the president on how far along Iran was or their intentions on developing a bomb. The president said recently that, well, she was wrong. So that just like highlighting some of the divide, or at least the difference of opinions there. Do we know who is in the room? What was Gabbard in the room there as part of this discussion tonight?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Look, the president has been meeting daily at this point for the last week with his national security team here at the White House, many times in the Situation Room. But it does just crystallize this deep divide within the party, and not just within the party writ large, but even, signs that there was this divide within his administration itself. And so it really remains to be seen what it was that finally sort of pushed the president in this direction, a direction that we know he long resisted.
At the White House for us. Thank you so much. We'll check back with you in just a bit. I want to go back to Steve Ganyard. Steve, we were just obviously talking about more about the strike, the B-2s, as we were getting confirmation of the different aircraft involved. And then we had the nuclear expert on talking about some of these other parts and pieces and suggesting that perhaps maybe this did not inflict as much of a setback on Iran as maybe the White House is hoping. And I just want to get your response to that, and some of the challenges that could still exist with some of these other parts and some of this other material that might be hidden in other places.
Yeah, Whit, I think nobody knows. And that's the answer that's the only answer we have at this point. We're going to have to figure out what the bomb damage assessment is. Clearly, Israelis will have people on the ground. But I don't think it's almost a straw man to say, well, it's not going to fix everything. Well, of course, it's not going to fix everything. But it got pushed to a point where the president made a determination that the Iranians were not serious. They came out of the meetings with the Europeans and they said, yeah, whatever, we'll see. We can talk again if you want. So they've made it clear that they aren't interested in further discussions. They aren't interested in further negotiations. So the president made the determination that he would go in and take out what the Israelis could not. And so how much gets taken out, how much it gets set back, how much damage is done to the program, we just don't know. And to say, well, there's intellectual capital and there are scientists there. Well, the Israelis have taken out almost 200 of the top military leadership and chief scientists within the program. That's remarkable. So let's wait and see. And let's not build straw men and just say, well, you never know, because we don't know.
Steve Ganyard, thank you. I want to go back to Ian Panel as we're sort of talking about what happens tomorrow. Ian, I know you've covered the fall of many regimes and the awful aftermath that has taken place. You spent a lot of time in Syria, and many people are going to be asking questions. What happens to the Iranian regime after this, the Ayatollah, if this campaign continues?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is a lot of these regimes live and fall on their ability to project, domestically at least, strength and power, and therefore to intimidate people, potential opposition. We see multiple times thousands of brave Iranians come on the street to challenge the regime. The question is, if the regime of Ayatollah Khamenei is seen as diminished, as weakened, as vulnerable, will that be enough to bring people out on the streets? But we also shouldn't forget that for many Iranians, they're also living in a state of fear. They're living in the middle of a bombing campaign that they didn't initiate, that they can't control, and that in and of itself doesn't necessarily inspire people to take to the streets.
Ian Panel for us, thank you so much. Again, we are having continuing coverage right now. These American strikes, 3 of them at different nuclear sites across Iran. President Trump is about to address the nation coming up at 10 o'clock. Our David Muir is going to be part of our continuing coverage here. Once again, the president calling it a tremendous success, these attacks that have taken place across Iran, multiple sites, nuclear sites, U.S. aircraft, including stealth B-2 bombers that were all part of this. The skies so far tonight have been quiet over Tel Aviv and Israel, as many are expecting a retaliatory response. Again, our coverage with the words from the president coming up right here on ABC News after this.
The news never stops. We are here in Israel, a nation at war.
We heard what appeared to be gunfire. The former president rushed off the stage.
Hurricane Helene ravaging the coastline of Florida. It's moving really fast. streaming across the state. And that's why ABC News Live never stops.
Taking you to the center of the story.
His news breaks live.
We hear those small arms fire around us. We're right on the border between Ukraine and Russia.
ABC News Live is there for you at the start of your day, all morning live. ABC News Live, right there, as events unfold across the day. ABC News Live, breaking down the day's top stories.
The Menendez brothers, re-sentenced to 50 years to life.
ABC News Live Prime going there, wherever the story is. Are you going to build it back up?
And ABC News Live, lighting up the weekends.
With breaking news and all the latest pop headlines.
Happy Oscar Sunday.
A lot to watch for tonight.
ABC News Live.
Because the news never stops.
Success is the alarm. I just had it.
Unless everything changes, this restaurant needs to officially cease operations.
Because keeping it open would be like
beating a dead horse before you throw it off a cliff.
We get it. We get it.
Showtime!
Try to keep up, yeah?
Walk like a G. Here you go, Neil.
The origin of Call Her Daddy was to make women feel liberated. I know what they want, because I want it too.
Thank you for sharing, because you gave me the courage to share today.
Don't be quiet. Speak your mind.
Amanda Riley was a mother, wife.
Everybody loved her.
I heard the words, "You have stage 3 blood cancer."
We gave our hearts, our prayers. We thought she was God's gift, but she was a liar.
Why would somebody fake cancer?
There's all these pictures of her in the hospital with IVs, tubing. It was only a matter of time until Amanda's whole world came tumbling down.
Oh my God.
Watch the Scamanda Binge all Monday night on ABC. The news never stops.
From Tampa, we are here tonight as Hurricane Milton has just made landfall.
The surge just keeps coming up.
Right on the border between Ukraine and Russia.
Downtown Tel Aviv, rockets or missiles coming in.
ABC News Live everywhere.
We're not far from where this rally took place, so just stick with us here.
Here in London, from the front lines.
Off the coast of Gaza, wherever the story is.
We're going to take you there.
You're streaming.
ABC News Live.
ABC News Live.
You're streaming ABC News Live, announcing on the U.S. had successfully bombed 3 Iranian nuclear sites, including Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. President Trump telling our John Carl just a short time ago that the mission was a tremendous success. ABC News has learned U.S. B-2 bombers were used. It remains unclear at this hour if those massive 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs were actually used during this operation. Perhaps he'll make that clearer when he speaks to the nation just a few moments from now. We do know that U.S. military from the United States to Iran, and the president says all of those bombers are now safely on their way home. We're also learning tonight that President Trump spoke to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu before the strikes, heads up to Israel before the attacks. We also know President Trump meeting earlier today with his national security team at the White House immediately before announcing the U.S. strikes. He has long promised not to allow Iran to develop a nuclear weapon. All of this, of course, comes after more than a week of strikes on Iran by Israeli forces. Iran firing back, striking Tel Aviv and other locations inside Israel. And Iran had pledged to retaliate if the U.S. joined the attacks. The U.S. has been surging forces to the region with an additional aircraft carrier strike group arriving in the region this weekend. Of course, the breaking news tonight, the U.S. striking Iran, several nuclear sites inside Iran. The president calling it a tremendous success on the phone with our John Carl a short time ago. And as we look at the microphone there, we wait for the president to address the nation. Our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, outside the White House tonight. And Mary, the president said he would give Iran 2 weeks. It turned out to be 2 days.
Yeah, David, quite a remarkable turn of events here in just 48 hours. The White House had told us just on Thursday that the president thought that he would have 2 weeks to make this decision. Here comes the president.
Again, meeting with his national security team earlier today at the White House. Let's listen to the president.
Thank you very much.
horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity, a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before. And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. I want to thank the Israeli military for the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the great American patriots who flew those magnificent machines tonight, and all of the United States military on an operation the likes of which the world has not seen in many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services in this capacity. I hope that's so. I also want to congratulate the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Raisin Kane, spectacular general, and all of the brilliant military minds involved in this attack. With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago. Tomorrow, General Kane, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth will have a press conference at 8 a.m. at the Pentagon. And I want to just thank everybody, and in particular, God. I want to just say we love you, God, and we love our great military. Protect them. God bless the Middle East. God bless Israel, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you.
President Trump there at the White House, Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio also serving as his national security advisor, along with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth right there with President Trump announcing to the nation, similar to what he said in his post on social media not long ago, that the U.S. is now directly involved with Iran, striking 3 nuclear locations, Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan, 3 nuclear facilities that the U.S. had long been studying, as well as international observers around the world in tracking Iran's nuclear program and their desire perhaps one day to have a nuclear weapon. I want to bring in Mary Bruce. Let's go back to Mary at the White House. Mary, the president had warned Iran, come to the table. Let's negotiate some sort of a peace deal, that this current conflict must end. At last word, he said 2 weeks would be his deadline. We know that's turned out to be 2 days. We'll learn in the hours and days to come whether that was part of the strategy here. But this is a fairly risky move for this president, though tonight he says it's been a victory. He thanked U.S. forces